Hello everyone, my name is Abby and I am the Young Adult Assistant at the Twin Lakes Library System and I use she, her pronouns. So today for Slice of Life, I kind of wanted to do a little continuation off of my last Slice of Life video, which was the 10 things that I think you should know about going into college, things I wish I had known, and I kind of wanted to do a little further explanation into that just because there's a lot of things you should know for college, and then just like in general post-graduation life. You might decide that you don't want to go to college or you don't want to do a traditional 4-year college and you would prefer to go to a technical school, which are all, very valid and important paths to be taking. But there's some general things that you could need to know just after your post-high school graduation life. So I'm just going to go a little bit into detail about that. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about is your living situation. So a lot of traditional 4-year colleges kind of make it a requirement that you have to live on campus for your first year. Some 4-year colleges even make you live on campus all 4 years. I'm pretty sure where my brother is going to school, they're making him live on campus for at least the first 2 years, and then they move them into some student apartment that's a little more lax than like a dorm. But we have different living situations. I didn't have to do that. I only had to live on campus for 1 year when I was at school, and my sister, I'm pretty sure where she went, like she did her first 2 years of college, she didn't even have to live on campus. She chose to, but she didn't have to. And her dorm situation was different from mine. But if you do end up living on campus for your first year, and then you are done on campus and you don't want to stay in campus housing because it's really expensive, and you don't want to stay in a dorm anymore, which is totally fine. Dorms can get pretty cramped. You're going to be picking a new living situation, and there are a bunch of different options. Normally college students they either like rent a house with some roommates or they rent an apartment with some roommates. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit for this first one, which is like house versus apartment. Since coming out of college, I lived in an apartment that was in an old house. So like the house was converted into different apartments. And then I now currently live in a house that I rent. Personally, I like having like my own, I have roommates, but like I like living in a house that's just me and my roommates just because I think it's a little bit more private. But there are some people I know who really prefer living in an apartment and think that the accommodations are a little bit better and they have more like extracurricular sort of activities that are offered and programs that are offered. I know that some apartments here have gyms and pools and they have different sort of services that they really like having access to that are helpful to them and that works for them in their lifestyle. So that's really cool. I think apartments specifically here tend to be a little bit more expensive. So my house is a little less expensive, but apartments also cover utilities usually in their rent and internet and some other things. So it's kind of just like weighing the pros and cons of the options that you have. One thing that works for one person, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you, and that's okay. I know people who don't ever want to live in a house near campus. They always want to stay in an apartment because they like that kind of lifestyle better, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So you just sort of have to make that decision for yourself. But wherever you choose to live, you are going to need some things that are, like your basic cooking utensils, like pots and pans and, like a whisk and a spatula and, just like certain utensils you're going to need when you first move in. And you don't really think about that stuff when you live in a dorm because you usually have on-campus dining, so you don't really cook for yourself. But that's important stuff that you need to remember when you are moving into a place, so make sure to account for that when you are moving into your off-campus living situation, wherever you decide to go and end up. Make sure you have things to take care of yourself. Make sure to have cleaning supplies. It's so important to have cleaning supplies. You definitely want to have a vacuum cleaner if possible. You don't even need to get a really expensive one. I ordered one off of Amazon for like $30, I think, and that's not like expensive at all for a vacuum cleaner, and it works just fine. Um, you need to have like just a general like cleaning sprays and paper towels or cloths. Those are a little more environmentally friendly. To like clean up after yourself and keep a mess. You definitely want to have a clean living space because it's not fun living in a dirty living space. So make sure to have cleaning supplies. Definitely have stuff to clean the bathroom because that gets messy very quickly. Make sure you have that. Make sure you have laundry detergent for whatever washer and dryer situation you have. To clean your clothes and everything. That's also very important. There's just like a lot of little things that you don't necessarily think about until you go and you live not with your parents anymore. So just remember those kind of things when you are first moving into your new housing. And then to kind of go along with that, utilities is something you're probably going to need to consider. So like I said, a lot of apartments, usually utilities are included. So when I say utilities, that's like your water and your electricity and your gas if you have a gas stove. So that's all stuff that you don't really think about at first. But for me personally, my rent does not include utilities, so I have to pay those separately. So I have my rent and then I budget for each month what my utilities are going to cost. I normally recommend people to budget to about like having $100 left over for utilities, so then your rent and then probably an extra $100 for utilities. And that usually covers it for me. But depending on where you live and how, well insulated your house is and how much water is being used, that could fluctuate. So that's just going to be something to pay attention for. But also, because a lot of apartments take care of that service if you decide to live in a house, you typically have to make sure that your utilities, you have them turned on. So for like my living situation, the electricity and the water are in my name. So I'm in charge of making sure, obviously everyone contributes to the bill, but I'm in charge of making sure that bill gets paid. I'm in charge of making sure if things are going wrong that I contact them. So for here specifically, I went to the Milledgeville like water department downtown, and I gave them all the information about where I'm living and had them look at everything, and they knew it was in my name. And then I had to pick a day that the water got turned on. So I recommend getting it turned on the day before you move in. Technically, you're like going to be paying for one day that you're not even living there yet. But I think it's a good idea to have the water and the power on the day before, because specifically in Georgia, it's so hot during the summer. It's like 1,000 degrees. And if you're moving in a bunch of heavy furniture, you're not going to want no electricity and no air conditioning. So I think it's probably a good idea to make sure that the water and power get turned on the day before, just so it's like ready to go for when you're there. It'll be a much nicer and smoother moving experience. But yeah, so I went to the water department and I got all that information, and then I like pay the bill every month. They send me like an email and then a letter in the mail to tell me how much I have to pay that month. My roommates and I personally like use Venmo, and I just Venmo them the amount that they have to pay. If you end up being the person in charge of that bill, you can choose however you want to make sure it gets paid, but that's how our system is. I recommend having some sort of system for bill payment. So I tell them when the bill is due, and when I send a request, and I send them the amount that they need to pay me, and they give it to me, and I go ahead and I pay the bill. You can set up, I think, for some utility services on auto pay, which is something that some people recommend. I personally don't really like doing that because I just never know when to expect the bill or like the money to come out of my account. I like to make sure everything's on track for me, but that's something you could choose to do. And then for the electricity, we use like Georgia Power, like a lot of people do. And again, same thing with the water bill, where I find out what day, they give me a notification of how much I have to pay, they give me a certain amount of time to pay it, I Venmo all my roommates, and they give me the money that needs to be done. Similar situation. And the same thing like the water, I set it up the day before we moved in because I did not want it to be super hot, because it would have been horrible moving in when it's super hot. So something to consider. And then kind of going a little bit further on that is internet. Some apartments don't have internet, and our house didn't have internet. We had to get our own internet, and that's in my other roommate's name, but basically it's not very expensive. But make sure you have that because you will most likely need it. I do know someone actually who didn't get internet at her house in college, which is amazing to me that she was able to do college at just going to the library and using the internet. That is a possibility. You can do it. But we have internet, and the same thing. She set it up, I think, a day or two before we officially moved in to make sure it was taken care of, and we had it. So those are all important things to think about that you don't necessarily think about when you're living with your parents or in a dorm, but that's stuff you have to consider when you are moving out. When you're picking out an internet plan, it'll be you'll obviously probably want the cheapest one you can get, but make sure it's offering the services that you will need. We pay a little bit more because we like to watch things on our computers using a bunch of subscription sites, and so we got a little bit more of an expensive one just because streaming messes with internet. If we didn't stream, we'd probably use a different plan, so make sure that the internet plan is fits your lifestyle. And then another thing is budgeting. So make sure you have enough money to pay your bills and buy food for yourself, and then you can go and spend it on other things if you so choose. But I recommend always pay for the things that need to be paid for first. If I get a bill, I don't go and buy something I love reading. And after I read a book from the library, if I really love it, I'll buy a copy of it for myself. But I won't do that until my bills are paid, because I need to make sure I have enough money for my bills. Which is something I always recommend, because you want to make sure you have enough money for your bills for that month. But also, I want to make sure I have enough money to eat. So I budget, basically. So I sort of, I don't budget hardcore, but I sort of have a guesstimation of how much my groceries are going to cost. Every 2 weeks is when I go get groceries, which I get paid every 2 weeks. So I guess how much money I'm going to be spending based on how much I've spent previously, and I'm pretty consistent about my budget and what I buy, because I really only buy things that I know I will eat. That's another thing that kind of goes into budgeting. I think you need to really only buy things you know you will eat, because you don't want to waste food, just because it's not, don't want to waste food, but also it's kind of a strain on your budget to buy things that you don't eat. It's kind of a waste. But, do make sure you get a fruit or vegetable in there every once in a while. But those are important things to consider when you're going to the grocery store. If you're not gonna eat, if you really don't think you're gonna eat those bananas, but you will eat the strawberries, get the strawberries, don't get the bananas. And if you think you'll eat pasta, but you won't eat soup, don't buy the soup or the pasta, because you'll eat that and it'll be an effective use of your money. The next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of financial stuff. So this is specifically more geared towards people who are going to a 4-year university or a college that offers scholarships. You should know that that if you're going to a school, there's most likely some way for you to get some sort of scholarship. I have a scholarship that's not directly through the school. It's the Hope Scholarship that you can get in the state of Georgia. I've had that for the entire time I've been in school. It's been helpful for paying for things. But say you don't get Hope Scholarship, or you can't get anything that the university offers, there are so many different websites that curate a variety of different scholarships that you might have not even considered as possibilities. I know, for instance, when I was in high school, I was told, because I'm left-handed, there's a school that offers a scholarship for left-handed people. It's not a lot of money, but like they offer some money for being left-handed. I don't really have to do anything besides be left-handed. And there are a lot of scholarships like that. You do have to look, you do have to make the time to find those kind of scholarships, but they're out there. There are a variety of different scholarships for different things that could be very helpful to financing your school journey. So that's something to consider. And then along with that, your financial aid, so FAFSA, is something that you'll probably do. If you go to a university, you're definitely going to want to fill that out sooner than later, because you might forget and then you get no financial aid, or you have to wait and see if you get any financial aid. It's really important to remember to do that and to make sure you can get all the information that is necessary for that. It usually opens in October. You should probably do it October, November, December. You can do it up until the deadline, but it's just probably better and less stressful if you remember to do it sooner. And then my last thing is student discounts. So, cool thing about being a student is everyone knows that you are paying a lot of money to go to school. So some companies like to make it a little easier for you to get their products by giving you discounted versions of them. For instance, the music service that I use, Spotify, they originally cost, I think, $11.99. But because I'm a student, it only cost me $4.99 a month to do that. And, having music is really important to me, and I really like having that as a resource. So the fact that I don't have to pay a full price because I'm a student is really nice, and they tag on some sort of other streaming subscription with it, so it's really cool, and it's a lot more affordable. And a lot of websites and different sort of apps will offer these things. You have to look for them, but a lot of them will be there and out there that you can have resources and access to that will help you and maybe make it a little bit more cost effective to do certain things and have subscription to certain things. So definitely look out for that stuff. So yeah, so those are all my little extra tidbits about college and post-high school graduation life, and I hope you all have a good day. Bye-bye!